cage is comfortable. That's why so few ever leave it. Whispered from the shadows, before we begin, here's a small ritual. Write in the comments one word that accurately describes your current state. Sign it and let's get started. They didn't chain you with iron. They didn't lock you in a cell. They simply taught you to smile at the right time, to say the right words, to nod when everyone else nods. That's how it begins. Not with violence, but with praise. You became what they needed, not what you were. Polite, predictable, harmless. They loved you more the less you challenged them. The more you erased yourself, the more they applauded. You were taught that love means obedience, that silence is maturity, that pleasing others is a virtue, but the cost of being loved by everyone is losing the one who matters most, yourself. You stopped saying what you really felt. You learned to filter every word. You laughed when things weren't funny. You agreed when your soul screamed no. You became the perfect image, but empty inside. Not because you lacked something, but because you gave everything, and no one noticed what it cost you. Being nice was survival. Being agreeable was safety. You felt seen, needed, approved, but only as long as you played your role. The moment you stopped, discomfort appeared. Not in them, in you. Because now, breaking the pattern feels like violence. Even whispering your truth feels like betrayal. But what if the real betrayal is silence? You weren't born to be digestible. You weren't made to fit every room. You came with edges, with fire, with chaos. You came to disturb the peace that enslaves. But early on, they told you that love means being easy. And so you cut off your wildness, tamed your instincts, silenced your power. You became pleasant, and you disappeared. This isn't your fault. It's a slow death disguised as virtue, a quiet extinction hidden under applause. No one forced you, but everyone trained you. They didn't want your truth. They wanted your cooperation. They didn't want your wildness. They wanted your agreement. And slowly you gave it. You became the version of you that wouldn't be left, that wouldn't be punished, that wouldn't be shamed, and you survived. But surviving is not living, and silence is not peace. Something in you has always known, a faint voice, like an echo in a forgotten room. You hear it at night. You feel it when you're alone. It says, "This isn't real. This isn't home. This isn't freedom." You've never been free. You've just been accepted. And that's not the same. True freedom terrifies the ones who profit from your comfort. They don't want your power. They want your politeness. They don't want your presence. They want your permission. And every time you say yes when you mean no, you feed them. You weren't born to be convenient. You weren't born to be small. But if you live like that long enough, you forget. And you start calling the cage your home. You were not born afraid. You were made that way. It began the moment you took your first steps, when your instinct led you toward the unknown, and someone said, "No." Not with cruelty, not with hatred, but with concern, with love, with the soft poison of protection. You were taught to be careful, not curious. Obedient, not alive. They showed you what's right and what's wrong, not by truth, but by reward and punishment. If you smiled the way they liked, you got praise. If you cried too loud, too long, or for the wrong reasons, they turned away. You learned that safety lives in conformity, that love is conditional, that being yourself is dangerous. No one told you this directly. It was never said aloud. It was felt, in glances, in silence, in the way affection disappeared when your truth became inconvenient. This is how the training begins. The child becomes a mirror, reflecting what others want to see. The more they please, the more they're loved. The less they resist, the safer they feel. But behind the mirror, something rots. The soul withers in a room where it's never allowed to speak. And they call it maturity. You learned how to behave. You learned the script. Say, thank you. Don't interrupt. Smile when you're hurt. Forgive what you don't understand. Forget what still bleeds. Be kind to those who exploit you. Be silent when something burns. And they told you this is goodness. But this is programming. A personality formed not from essence, but from fear. A mask that keeps you safe, but strangles your breath. You walk through life as an echo, repeating what you've heard, never asking where it came from, or if it ever belonged to you. The world doesn't want you real. It wants you refined. Not wild, not raw. It wants you shaved down to something manageable. Something non-threatening. Something that can be used. So they invented morality. They invented roles. They invented the idea that if you suffer in silence, you're a better person. That if you erase your anger, you're more spiritual. That if you endure enough, you will be loved. They lied. Goodness isn't obedience. Kindness isn't silence. Love isn't compliance. But if they can convince you otherwise, they own you. And most people are owned. Not with chains, with ideas, ideals, with shame. You learned early that to be chosen, you had to perform. You had to be good. You had to say yes when your body said no. You had to sit still when your spirit screamed to run. And this is what you now call a personality, a performance refined through trauma. But deep inside, the real one waits. The one who wasn't afraid to scream, to bite, to climb, to burn. The one who hadn't yet been told that their fire is a flaw, that their truth is too much, that their power is a threat. And still, that one lives in you. This part doesn't speak the language of manners. It speaks in hunger, in rage, in pulse. It speaks when everything else shuts down. It doesn't want to be nice. It wants to be free. But freedom costs everything you were trained to be. To break the training means to disappoint, to shatter the illusion, to be called rude, cold, aggressive, difficult. These are the words they use when you stop being useful to their comfort. They call you selfish when you reclaim your time. They call you arrogant when you trust your own voice. They call you crazy when you no longer respond to manipulation. But you are not crazy. You are waking up. This world rewards sleep. It rewards masks. It rewards those who fold themselves into the system and never ask why. But that's not life. That's slavery wrapped in applause. You've played the role long enough. You've been the good one, the soft one, the one who adapts, forgives, understands, tolerates, the one who bends, the one who bleeds quietly, the one who makes everyone else more comfortable while dying inside. And now something has cracked. Maybe it's the silence that became unbearable. Maybe it's the exhaustion that no longer makes sense. Maybe it's the realization that you were never truly alive, only performing aliveness. Whatever it is, let it burn. Let the obedience rot. Let the politeness fade. Let the training unravel. Because the life you're looking for, it begins where your programming ends. There is a kind of exhaustion that sleep cannot fix, a kind of silence that no music can drown. It arrives not after a long day, but after a long life, lived for others, worn like a smile, carried like a weight. And you've felt it, that hollow behind your chest, that smile that hurts your face, that laughter that leaves you emptier. You became a master of being fine, of saying, "I'm okay," when every fiber inside screamed otherwise. You walked through rooms like a ghost with perfect manners. You made everyone feel at home, except yourself. They called you kind. They called you warm. They said you were light in dark places. But they never asked who lights the fire for you, who hears your silence, Who holds you when your strength cracks and spills out through your eyes? No one did, because you never let them. You built walls out of grace, out of helpfulness, out of being the one who always understands, and they loved you for it. Not because they saw you, but because they didn't have to. You became invisible in plain sight. Every time you said yes when you meant no, a part of you disappeared. Every time you swallowed the truth to keep peace, the truth turned into poison. Not all at once, slowly, quietly, like rust, like rot. Until one day you wake up and don't recognize the face in the mirror, not because it changed, but because you never really looked. This is the curse of being nice. You become what the world wants and forget what you are. You shapeshift, you accommodate, you translate your pain into politeness, your rage into smiles, your boundaries into invitations. And they thank you. They reward you. They say you are so strong, so selfless, so easy to be around. But you are dying inside. Not in some dramatic way, not with screams or scars, but with a slow internal erosion, a fading, a quiet disappearance beneath the surface. And still, you show up. Because it's what you've always done, because breaking the pattern feels violent, because choosing yourself feels wrong, because you were trained to believe that love means sacrifice, that goodness means forgetting yourself. But it's not goodness. It's self-erasure. You've become fluent in the language of denial. Denial of your anger, your grief, your hunger, your truth. You've smiled through betrayal, laughed through pain, forgiven what cut too deep, apologized when it wasn't your fault, and you thought that was strength. But strength isn't suppression, it's truth. And your truth is, you're tired, not of people, not of life, but of pretending, of carrying everyone else while your own body breaks, of holding space for everyone else while you disappear. No more. You don't owe anyone your disappearance. You don't owe anyone your silence. You don't have to be agreeable to be loved. You don't have to be soft to be real. Let the mask crack. Let the rage rise. Let the tears come without explanation. Let the no arrive without guilt. Let your presence be unfiltered. Let your truth take up space. Because the world doesn't need another smiling ghost. It needs your fire. It needs your edge, your full presence. Even if it shakes things, even if they call you difficult, even if they walk away. Because what you've been giving wasn't love. It was survival. It was fear in disguise. It was habit, rehearsed so long it looked like nature. But your nature is not this. Your nature is wild, unapologetic, fierce, deep, full of contradictions. Your nature is not tidy. It is not agreeable. It is not made to be pleasing. It is made to be alive. And now, it's time. Time to stop shrinking. Time to stop performing. Time to stop offering your bones for others to sleep comfortably. Time to reclaim the body you abandoned in the name of love. Time to speak in your own voice, even if it trembles. Because trembling is not weakness. It's a sign of reawakening. And you are waking. Not all monsters roar. Some whisper with warm hands and soft smiles. Not all prisons have bars. Some are made of praise, of thank yous, of "you're such a good person." And not all manipulation looks like violence. Sometimes it looks like kindness. You learn to be the helper, the healer, the one who gives, listens, understands. You thought this made you good. You thought this made you safe. But goodness that demands your silence is not love. It's control dressed as care. You became the person who fixed things, who absorbed the pain of others, who carried weight that was never yours. And they loved you for it. Not because they valued you, but because you made their lives easier. You were never allowed to have needs, only solutions. You weren't celebrated for your boundaries, only for your flexibility. The more you broke yourself to serve, the more they called you noble. And the more you suffered, the more they saw you as enlightened. They taught you that real strength means carrying more, that real kindness means enduring more, that to be loved, you must disappear behind service. So, you put on the mask, not out of deceit, but survival. The mask of the giver, the calm one, the one who never needs help, the one who forgives everything, the one who never complains. You wore it so well that even you forgot it was a mask. But masks, no matter how gentle, are suffocating. Behind your kindness, there was rage. Not loud, not cruel, just tired. The quiet rage of someone who always gives and never receives, who listens but is never heard, who shows up and is never seen. And that rage, repressed, turned into exhaustion, into numbness, into resentment dressed as fatigue. And you called it burnout. But it wasn't just that. It was betrayal. Of yourself. By yourself. No one asked you to become a savior, but you learned that being needed felt like love, that being useful made you valuable. And so, you gave. Not just from your time, from your soul, from your essence, until you were drained, dry, invisible. And when you finally cracked, when you said no, they called you selfish. Because your kindness was never love. It was currency. It was how you bought connection, safety, belonging. This is the hidden violence of being good. It's not just that you're being used. It's that you learn to use yourself, to manipulate your own spirit into compliance, to mold your voice into something sweet, palatable, harmless. But your truth is not harmless. It is disruptive. It is fierce. It breaks patterns. It burns illusions. And that's exactly why you were taught to fear it. Because the moment you stop being agreeable, the system starts shaking. The balance breaks. The roles collapse. The game ends. And you are no longer a pawn. You become a mirror, one that reflects what others try to hide, one that exposes comfort built on your silence. So they will resist. They will call you changed, cold, angry. But what they really mean is, you're no longer playing the role. You're no longer pretending that being used is love, that being drained is virtue, that being silent is peace. You've unmasked yourself. And now you see it, everywhere. The friend who only calls when they need you, the partner who praises your sacrifices but never makes their own, the family member who loves you most when you're struggling because it keeps you dependent. You begin to notice the subtle economy of pain, where empathy is used to control, where guilt is weaponized, where love is offered with strings attached. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. But here's the deeper truth. It's not just others who did this. You participated. You agreed. You smiled. You stayed. Because you didn't know another way. Because you were terrified of being alone, of being unloved, of being called difficult. So you abandoned yourself in exchange for temporary belonging. Now you reclaim. Reclaim your no. Reclaim your boundaries. Reclaim the parts of you that never wanted to be convenient. Reclaim the fire behind your eyes, the weight behind your voice, the stillness in your presence. And you'll lose things. You'll lose roles, masks, relationships built on your silence. But what remains will be real. There is a power that comes when you no longer need to be liked. A liberation in knowing that your worth is not in how well you serve others, but in how deeply you stand in your truth. Kindness is beautiful when it's not coerced, when it flows from abundance, not depletion, when it's offered freely, not extracted. But kindness without boundaries is not love. It is self-abandonment. And love that demands your disappearance is not love. It is consumption. You are not here to be consumed. You are not here to be everyone's solution. You are not here to carry what others refuse to face. You are not here to bleed for their comfort. You are here to live, fully, fiercely, unapologetically, and that means, sometimes, being not nice, being real, being seen, even if your truth shakes the ground, even if it means walking alone, because it is better to be alone in your truth than adored in your absence. They told you anger was dangerous, that rage meant failure, that fury was weakness. They told you to breathe, to count to 10, to calm down. They taught you to smile while your chest burned, to speak softly while your soul screamed. So you obeyed. You turned your fire inward. You swallowed it whole. You called it discipline. You called it peace. But it festered, quietly, deeply, until it became part of you. Not a storm, but a pressure. Not a scream, but a weight. This is how power dies, not in battle, but in silence. You were never supposed to be numb. You were never supposed to be passive. You were born wild, fierce, electric. But the world feared that, because someone with fire cannot be controlled. And so, they taught you to fear your own heat. They made you think that anger is the enemy. But your anger was never against love, or truth, or peace. Your anger was the part of you that knew when something was wrong. It was the voice of your boundaries, the guardian of your soul, and they shamed it into silence. Not with cruelty, with correction, with soft words and long explanations, with lessons about maturity, about being bigger, better, more understanding. And you tried. You tried so hard to be above it, to transcend it, to prove that you were not like them. But in doing so, you cut out your own roots. Because without anger, there are no boundaries. Without fire, there is no protection. Without rage, there is no roar. Only a whisper that no one hears. You became polite, agreeable, spiritually correct, but hollow, disconnected from your own truth, from your own pain, from your own strength. They applauded you, they called you evolved, but inside, you were shrinking. Every time you said, "It's okay," when it wasn't. Every time you smiled through betrayal. Every time you buried your truth to keep the peace. You weren't healing, you were disappearing. Anger isn't chaos, it's clarity. It says, something is wrong. Something must change. Something must be defended. It doesn't mean destruction, it means direction. It means heat, movement, resistance. But you were taught that resistance is rude, that force is unspiritual, that power is oppressive. So you turned your power into softness. You turned your voice into whispers. You became someone easy to love and impossible to feel. But something in you has been stirring. Not violently, not all at once, just a slow awakening, a pulse, a pressure, a knowing that the calm you live in is fake, that the peace you show is learned, that beneath the smiles lives fire, ancient, sacred, and waiting. This fire is not here to destroy, it's here to awaken, to melt the chains around your throat, to burn the masks off your face, to set ablaze every lie you told yourself in the name of being accepted. You are not too much. You were never too much. You were just too awake for a world built on silence. Your rage is not a threat. It is a map. It points to your pain. It reveals your wounds. It shows you where you were crossed, where you were diminished, where you were told to be less. It says, here, right here, this is where the healing begins. But healing does not mean forgetting. It does not mean softening. It does not mean silence. It means remembering who you were before the world taught you to split yourself in two, the soft one they could keep and the fierce one they had to kill. Now, bring them back together. Let your softness have edges. Let your kindness have limits. Let your love have depth. Let your compassion include yourself. Let your anger walk beside your heart. You don't have to scream. You don't have to fight. But you do have to stop pretending that peace means passivity, that presence means politeness, that power means harm. You are not here to be palatable. You are here to be whole. And wholeness includes rage. It includes shadow. It includes the parts that don't smile, that don't agree, that don't bend. Those are the parts that kept you alive. Now, they are asking to do more than just survive. They are asking to lead, because your fire, when honored, becomes light, becomes warmth, becomes clarity, becomes presence. The world doesn't need another person who stays calm while bleeding. It needs someone who can say, "This is where it stops. This is where I rise. This is where I become something more than just agreeable. I become real." Rebellion doesn't always begin with a scream. Sometimes it begins with silence. Not the silence of fear, the silence of refusal. No announcement, no drama. Just a stillness that says, "Enough." It happens when you wake up one morning and no longer want to perform. You no longer care if they call you good. You no longer need to be liked. You no longer want to smile just to make others comfortable. You simply stop. You stop laughing at jokes that aren't funny. You stop agreeing to things that drain you. You stop explaining your no. You stop softening your voice to fit inside their expectations. And in that stopping, something is born. It's not anger. It's not defiance. It's not loud. It's presence. A weight. A groundedness. The return of something ancient inside you. Something that doesn't need approval. Something that doesn't negotiate its own value. For the first time, you are no longer a reflection, no longer a mirror, no longer a screen that plays whatever story they project. You become substance, texture, depth. And that scares people. Because when you stop playing the role, you interrupt the script. You were the one who always said yes, the one who fixed, who listened, who made everything easier. You were the emotional glue, the invisible net, the one who caught what others dropped, the one who held everything together. Not because you wanted to, because you believed you had to. It was survival. If you didn't make them happy, you feared they'd leave. If you didn't adapt, you feared being rejected. If you didn't take care of them, you feared being abandoned. So you overfunctioned, you overgave, you overperformed, all while shrinking, all while disappearing. But something changed. Not suddenly, not with lightning and fire, but slowly, like dawn breaking after a long night. You got tired, not just physically, soul tired, tired of pretending, tired of bending, tired of carrying things that were never yours. And so, you began to say no, not in rage, in truth. You began to walk away from conversations that drained you, from rooms that didn't feel like home, from people who only loved the version of you that served them. You stopped apologizing for your space, for your silence, for your needs. You began to value solitude over company that required your self-erasure. You began to crave stillness over stimulation. You began to feel peace, not when things were quiet, but when you were no longer performing. And that peace, it became sacred. It showed you that freedom is not loud. It is not theatrical. It is simple. It is choosing not to betray yourself again. You started to notice how much energy you spent managing others' emotions, how much you abandoned your own body just to be liked, how much of your life was scripted by fear of disconnection. And with that noticing came grief. Grief for the years lost, for the parts of yourself silenced, for the truths unspoken, but also gratitude. Gratitude that now, finally, you can stop. Stop pretending, stop rescuing, stop editing yourself into a more acceptable version. This is not selfishness. This is reclamation. You are not here to be digestible. You are not here to fit inside their fragile comfort. You are here to be whole, messy, contradictory, radiant, real. So you let go of the mask, not all at once, piece by piece. You stop pretending that you're fine when you're not. You stop trying to be everything for everyone. You stop shrinking just to avoid conflict, and you learn to sit with the discomfort of being misunderstood, of being seen as difficult, of being judged. You let them think what they want, because you finally understand their approval is not your nourishment. Their comfort is not your responsibility. Their love is not worth your disappearance. You begin to trust yourself, not the voice of guilt, not the voice of fear, but the voice beneath all that, the steady one, the quiet one, the one that has always known what feels true. You stop negotiating your intuition. You stop outsourcing your decisions. You stop asking for permission to be yourself. And the more you listen, the louder that voice becomes. It doesn't scream. It doesn't argue. It simply knows. It leads you away from noise, from chaos, from manipulation, and toward peace, toward alignment, toward self-respect. You begin to build a life that doesn't need escaping from. A life where rest is sacred, where honesty is normal, where you're allowed to take up space without earning it, where your value isn't based on how well you perform. And people will notice. Some will walk away. Some will try to pull you back. Some will say you've changed. But you'll know, this isn't change. This is return. This is becoming. This is who you were before the world convinced you to be small. And those who truly see you, they will remain. They will not require your performance. They will not punish your truth. They will meet you where you are, not where it's most convenient. Because when you stop playing the role, you make room for something real, something raw, something mutual, something that doesn't demand your silence as proof of love. And that is the beginning of freedom. Not the kind with flags or noise, but the kind that lives inside your bones. The kind that needs no validation, the kind that simply is. It lives in your breath, in your body, in your no, in your yes, in your sacred refusal to live a life that's not yours. That is rebellion. No raised fists, no fireworks. Just you, unmasked, unafraid, unwilling to disappear ever again. When you stop being useful, something terrifying happens. Silence, distance, confusion. People no longer know how to hold you. They fumble, hesitate, step back. You are no longer predictable, no longer comforting, no longer bending. You have become real. Not the version of you they curated, not the one who filled in the gaps, carried the weight, made things easier. Not the smiling echo, but the original. Raw, untamed, not pleasing, not compliant, simply present. And presence, true presence, is powerful. Because it doesn't need anything. It doesn't beg. It doesn't seduce. It doesn't prove. It simply is. And in that being, it disrupts every dynamic built on imbalance. The system trembles when you stop being useful. Because it depended on your silence. It depended on your guilt. It depended on the part of you that believed love must be earned through sacrifice. That worth must be proven through service. That identity must be constructed from other people's needs. But now you see how long you lived as a function, how long you were needed but never met, how long you were consumed but never truly seen. And in that seeing, something is born. It's not just rebellion, it's resurrection. The return of the parts you buried to keep the peace, the reawakening of instincts, desires, truths, the parts that said no before you learned to smile, the parts that felt pain before you learned to hide it, the parts that wanted freedom before you were trained to earn approval. This is not a breakdown, it is a breakthrough. You are not falling apart, you are falling out of character. And the world, the people, the roles, the systems, they won't like it. They'll say you've changed, that you're cold, distant, difficult. But the truth is, you were never really there. You were performing. And now, you've stepped off the stage. They loved the role. not the actor. And that hurts, because the illusion of belonging fades, because the applause stops, because the attention shifts. But so does the weight, so does the exhaustion, so does the feeling of being hollow. Because now, you are rooted, not in performance, not in usefulness, but in self. Not the self they named, the one you've remembered, the one who doesn't chase love because it lives in their own bones, the one who doesn't need to convince because they know. You begin to speak in a new voice, not louder, truer, fewer words, more weight, no more defense, no more justification, just clarity, just presence. You stop trying to fit, you stop trying to fix, you stop trying to heal others so they'll stay. You are not a remedy. You are not a product. You are not a role. You are a being, Ray. And that shift from doing to being changes everything. You slow down. You breathe. You eat when hungry, not when it's time. You rest when tired, not when it's allowed. You say yes when it's real, and no when it's honest. And you stop explaining both. You reclaim rhythm. You reclaim space. You reclaim time. Not as productivity, but as presence. You learn to disappoint others without abandoning yourself. You learn that saying no is a kindness, not only to you, but to them, because a forced yes is not love. A resentful agreement is not intimacy. You unlearn guilt, the guilt of resting, the guilt of not responding, the guilt of choosing yourself. You begin to see guilt not as a signal of wrongdoing, but as a residue of programming. And you choose anyway. You choose the quiet, the solitude, the path that isn't crowded. You stop chasing, stop pleasing, stop contorting. You begin to listen, not to the noise, but to the undercurrent, the subtle knowing that always lived beneath the fear. You hear it more clearly now. The whisper that says, you were never meant to be anything but whole. Wholeness isn't perfection, it's inclusion. It means you carry all of it, the rage and the tenderness, the longing and the limit, the desire and the detachment. You make peace with contradiction. You stop trying to resolve the tension. You let it be. You let yourself be. And slowly, your life becomes yours. Not a collage of expectations, not a reflection of duty, but a mirror of truth. You may lose people, you may lose places, you may lose everything you built while wearing the mask, but what remains will be real. And from that realness, something new grows. Not another role, not another mask, but a way of being that doesn't bend under pressure, a way of walking that doesn't shrink, a way of loving that doesn't erase. You will look into the mirror and for the first time, see someone you recognize. Someone not built, not designed, not arranged, but found. And in that moment, everything will soften because the search ends, not in someone else's arms, not in someone else's approval, but in yourself. You were never too much. You were just too alive for a world that prefers numbness. You were never wrong. You were just too honest for systems built on pretending. And now, you are here. Not to fix, not to save, not to serve, but to live. We're sure you've discovered plenty of value, so subscribe now and stay connected.